Hi everybody, this is Hero back with another Dragonflight video or a War Within video for WoW, and we're checking out some of these new hero talents. And I think the Priest one is getting a lot of negative feedback, and that's for good reason. This design, building it off of Premonition, which replaces Power Infusion, is a really difficult thing to do correctly, and I'm not sure that they really captured it fairly well. It's actually so bad, I think, because of the bland nature of some of these things, that I think it deserves a kind of remake and move away from Power Infusion. Very divisive spell. Keep some of the pieces here that are interesting, and I'd like to submit to you another version of this that I think is kind of cool. So let's go to that right now. Press the wrong button. So here is a set of Oracle Hero talents that I designed in Talent Tree Manager. And it begins with not the removal of Power Infusion, but by pushing together Power Word Shield and Prayer of Mending. These are iconic spells, really central throughput spells for each of these healers, and I wanted to see if we could build a design that captured what Blizzard really was interested in, which was a spellcaster that was thinking ahead or had something to do with fate or time, not in the way of the dragons, but this idea of anticipating things like the Sibyls of the ancient Greek world, right? These priestesses that could see what was going to happen in the future and could prevent things going on. So here's the idea, is what would happen if you put together Power Word Shield and Prayer Mending into one spell? Since there are quite a few synergies in both Disc Priest and Holy Priest for each of these spells, how can we make it work in an interesting way that gives lots of player agency? So as a baseline, this is an 8-second CD, which is a little bit larger than our CD for Power Word Shield, but I think can still work given some of these other pieces. Applies a shield, which is the Power Word Shield modifier, so anything in the disc tree that would amplify shields, including our mastery, would apply here. And 5 stacks of Prayer of Divination, which is again taking over the name of Prayer of Mending, and this Prayer of Divination stacking part would have everything to do with Prayer of Mending modifiers on the tree. And then for Disc, it applies 15 seconds of Atonement. While under the effects of Rapture, Prayer of Divination has no cooldown, so you preserve the gameplay that you get with the Disc Priest. When Prayer of Divination ticks, like with Prayer of Mending, when a target receives damage, there's a heal that goes off, and then the little Prayer of Mending bounces to another friendly target. Similarly, this is how we would do it. Instead of healing, when someone takes damage, they get a little shield. So that will scale as well with Disc Priest, but as a result not scale as well for Holy. So that's a distinction here that's being made, is we're giving a little bit of a bump on the mastery side for Disc Priest. I know shields are horrible, but don't worry, watch how the tree plays out and the different interactions here. But that's the basic starting point, is push these two together. In the next tier, we have a passive Mend the Past. When you take damage, cast Prayer of Divination on yourself. So that includes both the upfront shield as well as the 5 stacks of Divination that will bounce. And this can occur once every 2 minutes. And you'll see why I've set it there at that power level a little later. In the center here, we have our first choice node, Awareness. Whenever you dispel a harmful magic effect from a friendly character, reset the cooldown of Dispel Magic. Can only occur once every 30 seconds. I think it's good to get this flavor, which is partly what the Oracle that Blizzard had designed was doing. There's a 2 seconds off the Dispel Magic button. I think it's better to push it more towards a charge system, or reward the player by giving them more opportunities to use it right away rather than setting it at a CD. And the reason for this is it's not very often that we have significant use of a reduced purge, essentially, or dispel. Sometimes, like actually Farak is kind of an odd example in that the phase 1 you do want to be dispelling a lot, but is it significant enough given the way Blizzard designs both PvP and PvE? I don't think that 2 seconds off is the right way to go. It's kind of awkward to work with because sometimes you want to hold your dispel for a really important moment. Sometimes you need to dispel multiple things at once, and the cooldown reduction wouldn't be that valuable. But here, having a complete reset is great. The other choice node, whenever you dispel a harmful magic effect from a friendly character, you also cast Prayer of Divination on them. Again, both sides, the upfront shield and the 5 stacks. I like this because it gives you that trade-off if you're playing in a kind of encounter that really would prefer to have an extra dispel, you can get it, and if you don't, you have a fairly good incentive to be casting your dispel button. Righteous Hope, another passive here, this time tied in with some of our rotational casts or damage. Every 5 casts of Smite, Holy Fire, or Heal also cast Prayer of Divination on a random friendly target within 40 yards. So I like this because it's limited in scope, so it's not including Prayer of Healing. For the Holy Priests, it's only really the heal version of this. It's not even including Flash Heal, which is a button that's used by both to apply atonements in the one case, or a throughput button if we're doing, heal triage styles. But giving it to major damage pieces, but not all the damage pieces for Disc, I think is useful. Disc is in a good spot now where it's smiting quite a lot to get back Mindbender, so it makes sense that you'll get some value to this on both sides. But I like it too because it's a reward for doing damage actively, and this can stack up over the course of an encounter, but it's not crazy in every circumstance. Okay, building off of Mend the Past, we have Time of Need in the next tier set, which is when Mend the Past procs, this one above, you gain 1 free charge of Guardian Spirit for Holy, or Pain Suppression for Disc. And this buff, the ability to use that free extra charge, lasts for 20 seconds. That's partly why we've set this at 2 minutes as this kind of very small defensive buff. Given that the Prayer of Mending has been turned into shields, I think shields are kind of valuable, so having a bunch of Divination shields bouncing around and stacking up could be really powerful. So the one thing Mending does, it doesn't overheal a ton because it's only really proccing when things get hit, but nevertheless, it would be a little bit too powerful if we were getting access to more Guardian Spirit charges or more Pain Suppression charges every minute. So I think every 2 minutes is kind of nice, a niche little piece. It's also something to look forward to. If you're tracking this, you can tell when you're going to get this bonus, and it's useful in a lot of different kinds of content. Time of Relief, Mass Dispel is instant cast and its cooldown is reduced by 30 seconds. This might need to be tuned because we did have a reduction on Mass Dispel use, especially because of Mythic Plus, but this is available to both Disc and Holy, so I think it's reasonable that essentially for the healing priests, getting a slightly better Mass Dispel is one of the options you can index into in this new hero format. And then whenever you cast Mass Dispel, you reset the cooldown of Prayer of Divination. That's different than casting it. So obviously, if this is coming off cooldown, you don't get full value when you use your Mass Dispel. But it's also nice to have a follow-up button that's a really solid button that we want to press all the time as we're casting Mass Dispel. Time of Life. Power Word Life also shields the target for the amount healed. And this, again, leans a little bit more towards value for Disc, since there's a 750% spell power coefficient behind Power Word Life. But to turn that into a shield as well is awesome, and that would scale on Disc side. You could even, I guess, take out that just whitelisted or blacklisted from Disc if it was really too strong. But I like this idea for both priests that your Power Word Life essentially is doubling in value, and so maximizing the use of it is going to be great. And a shield means that you really are getting double the value, because the shield, well, unless it's wasted, but in a difficult situation, you're ensuring that you've topped the person and they're sorted out with a huge shield on top for quite a while. Moving down, another choice node here in the second last row, Hallowed Future. So for Holy, Guardian Spirit uses reduces the target's damage taken by 10%, so again, pulling over some pain suppression tech. And in Discipline, our pain suppression increases the target's healing received by 10%, likewise moving the other direction. This one I think is stronger for Holy than it is for Disc, which is okay. I think you're going to see uses either way. The one thing I would say is because you can index into 2 stacks of pain suppression, you get essentially twice the amount of use out of that cooldown. But Holy does get a reduced Guardian Spirit if it takes a certain talent, so there's an opportunity for each one. Maybe even if you're thinking of Time of Need, giving you that bonus Guardian Spirit. If you take the other option rather than the reduced CD, you can have Guardian Spirit for yourself and for somebody else as well. So there is some agency here of how you want to play with these cooldowns, but I like this blending element. And then the other option, Future Halo, or Future Halo I should say. When pain suppression or Guardian Spirit expire, reduce the cooldown of the target's major defensive ability by 1 minute. Again, I like that Oracle has the potential to have a unique niche, and this is a very small version of that, but having a big jump in defensive cooldown whenever you're casting these abilities is great, and it synergizes in having high uptime on them or getting them more often. So having multiple charges, giving that extra defensive layer is a really cool trade-off, I think. And other than the more damage reduction oriented piece that might be really valuable in certain contexts, like for a tank that's getting completely smashed by a boss, or in a PvP setting where you don't care too much about reducing the CD on one of your defensive cooldowns for your partners, but it's really helpful to have that 10% CDR or a little bit more healing bonus. The third choice node, and the final one for my version of Oracle, starts with Sonorous Voice. On the Holy side, our Divine Hymn also reduces damage taken by each target it heals by 5%, again leaning toward barrier tech. And then for Discipline, Power Word Barrier or Luminous Barrier applies 1 stack of Prayer of Divination to each target affected by it. So not the upfront shield, but just the stack that can then proc and put a little shield on the targets. So, but in a raid, this is pretty significant. You draw a barrier, everyone walks into it, they get 1 stack. It's kind of like a very small Holy Word Salvation going around, but as shields. Unending Praise, Divine Hymn, Power Word Barrier, or Luminous Barrier also dispel 1 harmful magic effect from any ally affected by it. I think it's nice to have the Oracle doing this kind of dispelling work, so leaning toward having better access to these sorts of tools across PvP, Raid, Mythic Plus dungeons, and to tie those in with really good and timely uses of these major cooldowns. So him, like doing a small revival, or having Luminous Barrier, or more likely Power Word Barrier, doing a revival effect, that could be a really unique addition to a Raid's toolkit, to a dungeon set if you need it, to a PvP moment. It might incentivize people to pick these up rather than them often being wasted or just afterthoughts. Diligent Please. When you gain a charge of Holy Word Serenity, Holy Word Sanctify, Penance, Power Word Radiance, or Prayer of Divination, healers in your party or raid gain 0.5% of their maximum mana. And this would have to be tuned, the number itself, but the idea is fairly straightforward, that you want to offer some utility to your healing core, and this is probably one of the weaker talents, but I like tying it in this way. Having both the Power Word Shield, which has its own index into absorption, so you can get mana back. It would also still be relevant for Prayer of Divination. And then finally, in the last row, Sibylline Song. Sibylline Song, every 30 seconds gain an additional charge of Prayer of Divination that costs no mana and causes no cooldown, so stacks up to 2 times. What this means is, as a fight is going on, if you're not using your Prayer of Divination, you can store up a few free charges that can then be sent out. Bang, bang. They don't cost you extra mana. They're kind of like flash heal charges that you get. but they're basically the old Prayer of Mending with a little shield on top. And I like this because it gives back agency to the various forms of content that you might be doing, while still tying into the main theme of mending and shield usage. And it just means that the player can be confident that even though they might be sitting for a few seconds on this Prayer of Divination charge, they are always stacking up towards extra charges that they can use in a burst moment. So you can plan your gameplay around that to some degree. I just want to go over to the talent calculator for Holy Priest and for Disc Priest. Just ensure you can see this properly. And I'll take my video off so you can see it and talk to you a little bit about the pieces that are available to us that correspond with these spells. So obviously Prayer of Mending in the class side with focused mending. You can see that has some interactions. And then we get on the holy side, if we just punch in mending, you have quite a lot of synergy here across the kit. And you get interesting interactions that I think this new version would benefit from. Getting Renew, and then Renew Healing, joining to that. Prayer of Mending jumps to a target affected by your Renew, they get healed. 4% more per bounce. Jumping an additional time, so 1 extra charge, right? Or 2 extra charges. 15% not to consume a charge. These things are all kind of fascinating when you pull it together with a new Oracle orientation. But they're not all game breakers, right? So too with Disc Priest and Power Word Shield, there's some trade-offs here. We put in... So we have Rapture, for example, Shield Discipline, which I mentioned. You have barrier stuff, which we talked about a little bit. And then the other Power Word Shield stuff. Reducing the cooldown of it. So your flash shields and your renews would reduce the cooldown of Prayer of Mending, essentially. Or, excuse me, Prayer of Divination. We saw that on the other side, that Prayer of Divination or Prayer of Mending gets cooldown reduction as well. So that pairs nicely. You start with 8 seconds, and then each side has a way to cool it down if it wanted to really index into it. You've got more shields and more absorption, and then you can do really strong things like Aegis of Wrath. So the upfront part of Prayer of Divination would absorb 30% more, but that decays down. And likewise, you can increase the healing of your next one up front as well. Think about Crystalline Reflection as well. These are all interactions that I think are kind of interesting, but not game-breaking. You would still have other options, but if you're doing Oracle, in my mind, what you are indexing into is this side. And I think every single hero talent that they look at should give you like carve a path through the main talent tree. Not be only concerned with one thing, but carve a path that has enough interactions that make for an interesting theme. And what they were doing, I think, with the original Oracle that was published is not really giving enough thematic cohesion. The power infusion stuff is just really problematic. People, if you're going to give up power infusion, what you have to get back has to be exceptionally good. And what they gave was kind of a whack-a-mole, very complex type of maintenance that the priest would then have to engage in order to make good on or use it to the best of the ability. And you think, well, isn't that good gameplay? You'd think it would be, but when you take away power infusion, which is a huge, huge contentious issue, and you don't give something back that really you that you can have any serious agency over, you just have to choose the right DPS player to give the magic damage one to, or the physical damage 1/2. It's like Blessing of Summer. Do you remember when Paladins had that whole fiasco? And initially everybody got blessed. That was like the first round, is everybody got it. And then they had it, well, let's pare it down, and then they just nerfed it into the ground, because these kinds of support style things really are difficult to balance well. Not in terms of the numerical piece, but in terms of community perception. Power Infusion has a long history of that, and I think not a good idea to try to give that to Disc and Holy as an option. Rather, grab, like you did with the Frostfire Mage, grab the 2 filler or main spells and blend them together and see what kinds of interesting interactions you can produce. Find something that has to do, like, that gives you cohesion. Like, this is all about preemptive stuff, about seeing the danger and having the tools to deal with it in a way that no other healer does, like extra dispels, or having this sense of this future predictive power, like I'm going to need an extra tool, and so you get some of these choice tools like Guardian Spirit or Pain Suppression. Having spells like Power Word Life Buff, which amplify your ability to triage heal and really index into that sort of life-saving oracular function. Anyways, that's just kind of a verbose way of saying that I think I prefer my version, and you don't need to. But let me know in the comments what you think. I have a feeling that the Oracle is going to change substantially, and this would be my suggestion to Blizzard on how to do it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.